through the Hispanic Affairs Project, a non-profit based out of Grand Junction. We have a chapter here that runs a local chapter called Emigrantes Unidos. For years now, I'm talking close to a decade now, Emigrantes Unidos and Hispanic Affairs Project has been working really hard at trying to engage, the police department from the city, the planning department from the county to come in and host meetings in a safe space so that individuals from the Latino community can have an understanding of how these processes work or who to call when you need X, Y, Z.
Welcome to the Kooler Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kuehlhorn, and I'm excited to have you join me as I interview community members and business leaders from the communities in which I live, work, and serve through my business Kooler Garage Doors. We're going to bring you highlights on characters in our communities. Why? Because community matters, and I want to know more about who is behind our business and leadership in order to understand and support the community fabric that our relationships make up. And collectively, we can build stronger communities that support our lifestyles, our youth, and our health.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Kooler Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kuehlhorn, and today I have my friend Diego Plata, the City of Gunnison Mayor. Diego, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here and have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you on this level of public servant for the City of Gunnison. I've known you for a number of years now and seen you at the gym and chased you in half marathons. And you recently, I guess it wasn't super recent, but when did you become the mayor of the City of Gunnison?
Yep. So I became mayor on December 7th, 2021.
Right on.
And a little bit of civics here on how the City of Gunnison elects its mayor. Every 2 years, 3 of the 5 council members are up for re-election. The top 2 vote getters in that election are elected to 4-year terms. Third place vote getter is elected to a 2-year term. That's really designed so that there's a shuffle on the board itself. Once elected by the town or the city residents, we, the board, then work through a vote to elect who the mayor will be. So it's an appointed mayor by the board itself.
Yeah.
I was appointed in December, so just a little over a year ago, on a 3-2 vote.
Awesome. And give us a little backstory. Where did you grow up and how did you end up in Gunnison?
Yeah. So I was born in Mérida, Venezuela, small mountain town at about a mile high as well. I spent the first decade of my life in Venezuela. My parents chased the American dream, moved to Maryland, suburbs just outside of DC,
Wow.
where I attended middle school and high school. And then I attended college in Baltimore, Maryland. Spent the second decade of my life in that Maryland, Baltimore, DC area. Shortly after graduating college, I decided I wanted to learn to ski and thought Denver would be a good place to move to both learn to ski and try to pick up a career of sorts. It was the financial crisis of 2008 when I graduated, so jobs were hard to come by. It was a great first winter. I spent a lot of time skiing because I was unemployed. So stayed there, found a job with the firm that I'm actually still with 12 years later, and spent some time in Denver, about 6 years. Through my work, I learned a lot about some of the work that our company does and some of the social impacts that come with infrastructure and natural resource work. And so I decided to up my resume through a graduate program focused on social impacts or some sort of community-focused topic. And so looking online, I looked at Colorado universities, and Western at the time offered the Apply Now, soon to be, and Masters of Environmental Management. And so I applied and was accepted, received a fellowship that required me to be here on the ground in Gunnison. And so my wife and I decided, let's give it a shot. We moved to Gunnison in August of 2014 me to start this program and continue work remotely, and her to take off her career as a behavioral therapist. And we've been here since.
That's awesome.
Hey everybody, this is Luke from Kooler Garage Doors. Just want to take a quick second to talk about our sponsor, Sommar Garage Door Openers. In our opinion, Sommars are the highest quality product on the market today. We recommend them for all of our residential garage door installs because of the variety of features they include, such as Wi-Fi connectivity and safety features such as a fixed chain, which moves along a secure rail to ensure your garage door opens quietly and safely. Click on the link in the description to learn more about Sommar Garage Door Openers.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And how did public service find you? How did you choose to go for city council and get involved on that level?
Yeah, there wasn't necessarily an itching urge at first. Through the program, the MEM program, I really wanted to walk away and be on the ground and do some of the work that I had studied and did some of my master's project on. And as I mentioned, I was working remotely for the same firm that I'm with, and I was really doing more business development for them, which didn't allow me to be the seller doer in a sense. I was mostly on the seller business development side of the house. I really wanted to be on the ground doing the work, but it was really challenging to do some of the work here in Gunnison because we don't have an office here on the Western Slope entirely. I'm really about the only employee over here, and it became apparent to me that there was a nice sweet spot where I could maintain a career, go moving forward with the company, guaranteed income without kids, and I could also find a way to get engaged in the community through some I won't say volunteer work because there's a stipend, but I did find and started paying attention closely to the county's planning commission board. In, I want to say 2015 16 or 17, I applied for and was appointed to by the Board of County Commissioners to the County Planning Commission. I spent almost 3 years on there, and learned a great deal about the land use process, our land use resolution, the county's process for planning, etc. And that was really fulfilling because it got me involved. I was able to go see project sites, really understand the process, and meet a lot of the individuals who are making these decisions or running these processes for our community. While on this board, I started paying a little bit of attention to the city council and learned of the upcoming elections, and was pleasantly nudged by Kathy Pagano to consider running for office. For me, being an elected official, I have been told previously, this is before even planning commission, that I can at times come off very diplomatic. And so the thought of actually being an elected official was to me enticing and perhaps fitting to my persona or personality. And after getting the vote from the most important constituent, my wife, to go for it, I decided to throw my name and run a campaign in the summer/fall of 2019. At which point I was elected by the town to my first term, a 4-year term on city council.
That's awesome. And I applaud you and anybody that runs for city council. It's especially, I can do some reflecting, and you mentioned 2019, but so then there was, our years of COVID and some difficult policy style decisions that went through there. And what I recognized just from my own observation was that anybody in leadership during that time was almost set up to not win in some regards. Like there was going to be difficult decisions that had to be made based on some information, but not collecting, there wasn't enough time for years and years of data. And so, I just recognize that. And
no, I appreciate that because in hindsight, I can now kind of smile as I say it, but then I I would always say it's a tough year to decide to jump into politics for sure.
Yeah.
It was a real learning lesson for me, for everyone, of course. And you're right. The decisions that we were making were informed to the best of our ability from the perspective that we didn't have a game plan for this. We didn't have,
Right.
This is what we do now. We're kind of, as everyone has heard, making the ship as we steer it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, to me, it was really an incredible opportunity to immediately jump into that groundwork that I really wanted to get into and engage our community. And I'll speak particularly to my ability to connect directly with the Latino community. Because as you know, and many on your podcast or some of your listeners might know, we have quite a large Latino population, a lot of them Spanish speaking, and a lot of them not very fluent, if at all, in English. And communication was critical during this COVID period. During my time with this company, Stantec, and I'll give it a name, during my time with Stantec, my first 5 or so years, I actually spent as Latin America's regional marketing / business development specialist. And a lot of that had to do with creating a process through which we would translate both internal and external documents and communication. So I had a background in setting up a process through which we would quickly translate things, get them QA'd so that they would be accurate, and then distribute these. I worked closely with members of Health and Human Services at the county level to jump right in and put a process in place so that we could translate those daily emails that were going out, and then just any kind of communications or posters or anything that was written or verbal, we could try to get turned around as quickly as possible through a process. And there were a ton of volunteers that just came out of the woodworks that, hey, I speak Spanish, I can help translate, I can help QA. I did a lot of the translations myself. And that was, we did it day in and day out for the first 2 or 3 months possibly. And then, as those messages started dwindling in volume, we were able to reorganize a bit. But to me, it was, while exhausting, a really neat opportunity to immediately jump in from using my language, my Spanish, but also just engaging with the community and keeping in touch with them and building relationships with them. So it was definitely challenging for everyone. I try to find the silver lining, and to me, as far as civic engagement, that was it.
That's beautiful. And you mentioned the diversity in our community. How large is Latino and core populations in Gunnison County? Is there a percentage or?
Yeah, so according to the 2020 census, the county-wide population of Hispanic, Latino is around 17 to 18%.
Wow.
And it's speculative, but it's my opinion that number is probably closer to 20 to maybe even 25%, because as we know, the census isn't tallying everyone. And I know for a fact that there is some hesitation from the Latino Latinx community to partake in any kind of government process, just from a fear of deportation. Legal status is a real issue here in the Valley, and I think it prevented some individuals from participating in the census. I think some people didn't participate because they're juggling 2 kids and have 2 jobs and just didn't have the time to do it too.
Right.
But yeah, 20, I think, is a good number.
Yeah. Either one of those, that's a significant portion of the population. And
it is.
I would imagine oftentimes underserved, whether it's a language barrier or, like you were mentioning, potentially an individual's desire to come forward and ask for assistance or to go gain some assistance with resources we have in the community. What do we do as a community to help serve an underserved population, assuming that that's somewhat realistic?
It is realistic. And I'll start by stating that it's an absolute truth and an issue that, or challenge that the city is working on actively. I will add that challenge extends to individuals who are not from the Latino or Hispanic community as well. True. And the overlap there, I think, is just the not knowing where the process starts and ends, or what entity to go to for you know, childcare support or health support, what have you. I think there is a just general civics lack of understanding from the community at large.
Yeah.
But then to that, you add a language barrier, and it becomes even more challenging to the Latino community. To that, you add that legal status barrier, and it becomes, it just gets a little bit further and further and more difficult for them to reach those resources. And so I think as a community, the community has spoken in some ways, and I'm really proud to be representing that part of our community on council, because, I often say I take very little credit to this, but through the Hispanic Affairs Project, a non-profit based out of Grand Junction, we have a chapter here that runs a local chapter called Emigrantes Unidos. For years now, I'm talking close to a decade now, Emigrantes Unidos and the Hispanic Affairs Project has been working really hard at trying to engage, the police department from the city, the planning department from the county, to come in and host meetings in a safe space so that individuals from the Latino community can have an understanding of how these processes work, or who to call when you need X, Y, Z. The city itself now has a full-time city liaison, Ricardo Esqueda, who is just an invaluable member of our team now. And he really supports a lot of these needs through translating a lot of the documents. And, if you're going to add a shed to your house or need to go through a building permit, he's been working on translating those actual documents. But then he also facilitates a lot of that conversation with the Parks and Rec department to get their kids into the program, or with the community development department to help the process as you're going to build a house. And so Ricardo has been invaluable. The clerk's office in general has really done a phenomenal job at upping communication and inclusion of our Spanish-speaking population.
Love it. What would you like people to know about the city of Gunnison that they may not even consider? Looking for either to bust a myth or to bring forth something that, I, as a simple participant in the community, may not have top of mind or know about, that might be a boost or some kind of strength to the city of Gunnison?
Yeah, I think something that needs to be recognized by, even our own staff and then just everyone in town is, we're all primarily either live here or live within the county, and are really working to better the organization itself, which in turn betters our community. I feel like, and back to your COVID, back to the COVID point, right? Particularly post-COVID, there was a real, and there still is a real pushback on government and rules and regulations, and what the intent is. Is it a control issue? Is it a ego issue? And the truth is, I've never really felt like I'm in power by any means. To me, it's simply an opportunity to help and engage with individuals who may have not otherwise engaged. And I feel like it's much the same with the rest of council as well as city staff. I think there's this common misconception that we are using tax dollars to just buy frivolous things and give staff raises beyond and above what they deserve, or that we're not using our resources wisely. And don't get me wrong, man, I fully understand that it's a challenge to many to see their tax dollars go in a wrong direction. And I say wrong based on just simply individual opinion. But I also want people to know that When I first moved here, I remember it was Dave Weens. Actually, I went to a talk, and Dave Weens said it, and it stuck with me. And it was he was talking to us about how they redid the base area at Hartman's, and he came up with this phrase, and it was, "If you're not at the table, you're the meal." And I use that lightly because it's not a threat or any kind of menacing comment, but I do feel like if you're not engaged and you're not participating in the conversation, or at least keeping an eye on the newspaper as to what's being discussed at a council level, at a planning commission level, general direction for city staff to go in through our strategic plans, then it's really challenging when the individual shows up to the one meeting where we're going to make the decision on the one thing and gives their spiel, or opinion rather, and it's a big ship to get to that point, to the decision point.
Yeah.
There's been 6 to 8 months of conversation around this topic, and you could have been involved the entirety of the time, and we welcome it. In fact, I plead to people to please come to the council meetings. And I know that that's a challenge because, we've got kids and jobs and we're tired and we've got 1,000 things going on. Moreover, let's be honest, council meetings are not going to be the most entertaining way to spend your Tuesday afternoons. Nonetheless, if you engage, if you paid a little bit of attention, if you picked up the minutes, you could really find out so much about what's going on within the city operation, and find the appropriate time to engage so that we can steer the ship together, rather.
Yeah. I love that. So what I would extract out of this, and I'll emphasize it from my own perspective of working in some quasi-government roles in the past, is basically the component of collaboration is huge. And
yes,
the city is actively collaborating within a teamwork and a community coalition framework, and encouraging involvement from community members all the time. Not all the time necessarily getting it until some emotional or fired up decision is about to be made,
yep.
right?
Yep.
One thing that I've noticed, and I'd love to offer you the opportunity to speak into it, when I was working in some quasi-government and interacting with some of the coalitions and watching the city and the county at work, what I saw was that our county and our city has really amazing resources that support its citizens and the community. And sometimes the citizens and the community aren't even going to see it. I think of our health coalition, GCSAP coalition, like there's a lot of different players at the tables. I think we have a lot of things going for us with an engaged school system. And while there can be disagreements amongst, decisions made, I feel like there's a level of conservatism that is looking for the long-term health of our community versus making any reactional quick decisions. Would you agree or wrestle with that?
Yeah, no, there certainly is. And I, from an emotional perspective, fully understand it. This is a beautiful place, and we want it to stay as is. But I think there also needs to be I think individuals need to put on their pragmatic hat as well as they consider these kind of decisions or movements within the city or county. I guess, can I ask you to repeat the question and just like kind of the key point that you're looking for me to?
Well, let me shift.
I
guess
know where we're getting it.
Yeah, let me shift the question just slightly, because I think my point was to just extract the fact that there is a ton of collaboration and systems set up within the city for guiding city council, for making decisions for the city staff that is beyond individuals. Like there's a lot of conservative checks and balances, if you will, getting community input as much as possible to guide policy shifts and such. So taking that into this refined question, we're seeing change within the entirety of the Western Slope. We're certainly seeing it in our valley. Vail bought Crested Butte a number of years ago, and we're seeing this Vail effect, if you will, populations coming from larger towns and potentially shifting culture, shifting population. How does a city council who's sitting for 2 or 4 year terms and maybe a few more, but how are we making long-term decisions in the present?
Gotcha. Yeah, no, and I guess, and that's, yeah, I think that's where I was going with my first answer. It's about, I mean, being conservative is fine, and being forward-thinking is fine as well. I think it's a good exercise to try to find the balance in the two, and tying it back to COVID, right? Making the best decision that we can now, looking ahead 10, 15, 20 years. I think it's certainly important to prioritize the absolute needs. Water, right? I think is key. That's the biggest issue. Climate change in general is probably one of the biggest issues. And then with that comes energy, or resources, food, health services. And all of that, I think, touches everybody in the valley. And so finding a ways to collaborate with the county, with Mount Crescent View, even with Pitkin and Ohio City, Lake City, even though they're further. I mean, we're all on this geographical island of sorts. So I think it makes a great deal of sense to work together towards a common cause, which is, in my opinion, the better of the community in general.
Yeah.
I think making decisions today to look ahead 15, 20 years from now, in particular in the midst of a climate crisis, it's really important to prioritize those key items: water, air pollution, energy, etc., so that we can update policies as needed, update infrastructure as needed, in a way that uses what we've got already on the ground. So as an example, roads is a big component, and we had a failed ballot initiative that was requesting a 0.5% sales tax to move road maintenance ahead. But it failed. It failed by 280 votes. So 141 people voting the other way would have passed this.
Right.
And the catch is, roads are looking fine to everyone, because the truth of the matter is they are. You know, we had a asphalt study done recently, and 60% of the road, or most of the roads, are scoring a 60% or better on this scale that's used to rate them. And so they're looking fine. The catch is the uptake of road maintenance needs to begin now, so that in 20 years we're still ahead of that curve. And if we don't, in 15, 20 years, roads are going to be past the point of maintenance, and they're going to have to be tore out and rebuilt, and that costs 4 to 6 times as much, right? And so
that's right.
Taking this kind of comprehensive view, our water, we just had a recent water study done year and a half or so ago, and I'm happy to share that last week our consultants now officially kicked off our water treatment plant plan, because we've got the Gunnison River right there, and that's great, and we have amazing water rights, historical water rights, that are going to protect our citizens and any growth that might come as a result of Gunnison rising, etc. Nonetheless, our water distribution system is really outdated. We have 9 very vulnerable wells across town, and if any of them have any big contamination or leak of sorts, we could have the state coming knocking on our door and telling us, you've got to shut down your water supply system and start handing out water bottles. And so hopefully that doesn't happen. We're taking every step that we can in precaution to ensure that it doesn't happen, but the accidents do occur. And so planning for the future, we're looking at a water treatment plant that can siphon all of those wells into one place, so that we have a secure way of routing water to where needed. Have a manifold of sorts, so that if we need to shut off the wells by the airport, we can, without affecting that population near the airport. All of that tying into the regional perspective, we're also under a 3-month plan study with the county, which is state mandate, to understand where the city might grow 3 miles outside of its city limits. And water is a big component of that. The roads are a big component of that. access to the highway is a big component of that. And so the decisions that we're making now are absolutely taking into consideration future growth, future resource needs, and it really does bring in that collaboration with the county, with the city, and then with any citizens that want and can get engaged, because their input is incredibly valuable for elected officials to make the decision, for staff to understand what the challenges are or not. And then tying back into the Latinx population, as far as transportation in particular, a lot of the Latin members that I know use the bus to get up and down the valley. So making sure that we've got the bus stop here or there, and working with our TA to make that happen. So it's a lot of moving parts, no doubt. But it certainly is, for me, top of mind to think, all right, what decision was made 15, 30 years ago that got us to where we are now on roads? And the answer is, I think, the wrong decision. Let's keep rates low across everything and just let everything go to waste, essentially. We're not going to upkeep anything. We're just going to keep rates low. So I've had to make numerous challenging votes of, okay, we need to up the utility rate so that we can upkeep our electric, right? So that we can start to maintain our water treatment plant. And it's not easy to have that conversation with them. It's like, yeah, we're going up 25% on utilities because we haven't raised rates in decades.
Right.
And everyone is falling apart. So it's a catch-up game in so many ways, but it's really challenging to explain the intricacies behind the money or the tax revenues to individuals in a 5-minute conversation.
Yes. Especially with the external forces of inflation, rising costs, it's already an expensive community to live in.
And it is. We're an island, and it's hard to get things here and get them out of here, so that adds to the cost.
Yeah. But that's an interesting point, and I think that's probably one of those myth components, or at least the things that a citizen is not necessarily thinking of or going to see. For myself, I've known where the wells are. I haven't known exactly how vulnerable or what the mechanics to them are, right? So it's like, oh yeah, pump water out of the ground, we're good to go. I like knowing where my water is at. A lot of people maybe don't have that question of where do you get your water from? And then the infrastructure that goes into that, you're exactly right. It takes maintenance. And if we defer maintenance, then we're just deferring a larger check down the road, and it becomes more of a quote unquote emergency scenario versus just annual maintenance, getting the oil changed in the car kind of deal. And yeah, that is a difficult education piece for sure.
It is because it's, I think it's really,
it's not sexy, right? It's just like the infrastructure. No, it's not something I'm going to see. It's like the framing or the insulation behind the wall. Well, and
it's really, it's especially not sexy because some individuals, and rightfully so, look at government as an entity that is to provide the basics: roads, electricity, water, trash pickup. The rest is up for grabs, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what in our charter, that's not the way that this community has voted in the past to make these other things happen that are not essential. I'll point to Parks and Recreation as an example. Our rec center last year, and I heard this from Dan Vollendorf a few weeks ago, they got close to 250,000 individuals coming through. 250,000 people served in 1 year. That's an approximate ballpark number, but you think about the number of kids that are in there on a daily basis, laughing their face off in the pool or having a great time in the gym or falling and hurting themselves. That happens too, but it is an essential part, and we provide that through tax funding. A lot of the other misconceptions come around. Where is that money coming from, and why are you using my tax dollars to? I'll go ahead and point to it. This mural in IOF Park. And here's a good myth buster. The city had absolutely nothing to do with the funding for that mural. Right. That's not even a city-owned building. It's a privately owned building that was funded by the by TAP in its entirety. So then the question or the other myth is, well, you're spending a lot of money on IOF Park and the renovation there. And again, that was a grant that was given to the city by the state. And so, there's all these background conversations that, and I don't say this to like throw it in that individual space, but just to like shed light on the fact that those misconceptions are out there and they're really hard to break because there's so many moving pieces and parts that are hard to justify to people of why we're spending our money there instead of here.
Yeah.
And then I'm not batting an eye at, the $50,000 that it costs to build that, or to paint that mural. That's a lot of money. But I guess when you look at it in the scope of the city's budget, which is budgeted at $38 million for 2023, you got to start picking and choosing where you really focus your energy on. What, is $50,000 worth this much energy from the community versus let's look at the $1 million that we need to fill the gap to maintain our road. So it's hard for sure.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's a matter of perspective. There's awareness, there's education, a lot of nuances in there. Diego, I know we can probably chat for a full hour, but let's put a little bow tail on here. I've got 2 final questions for you.
Great.
With where we're at and where we're going, what are you excited for over the next couple of years?
This was from your prompt questions, this was the most challenging question to think through because I've got a number of things that I'm excited about, personally and for the city. Personally for me, it's just my girls are growing up, and for me personally, it's really exciting to grow my family here in the Valley, building a community with other parents, other kiddos, etc. For the city, I think it's continuing what I think and believe to be a bit of a change in a shift in mentality as growth continues, and really having individuals at leadership levels right now across most, if not all, of the entities in the Valley that are, in my opinion, collaborating quite well. We're doing a good job, in my opinion, in the north end of the Valley, staying communicated with the south end of the Valley and everyone in between, all of the big organizations, Western, the hospital, the community foundation, staying in tune with one another's challenges and priorities so that as growth continues, we work together to tackle the challenge rather than Mount CB is going to do it and we're going to do it. We're just spinning our wheels. We could easily do the same thing together and maybe save some money doing it and do it in a more cohesive manner. The synergy that I feel when I'm in meetings with other leaders from across our community is I think really rejuvenating in some ways. Moving here only about 8 years ago, I did immediately feel this bit of a rift, and it continues. Don't get me wrong. There's still a bit of that Crested Butte Gunnison rift, which is, in my opinion, unfortunate. But I think if the leaders can start talking to one another and collaborating together, we can show that through our actions, those fictitious walls don't really need to be there by any means. We're all in this together. And COVID, I think, was a really a bit of a good ground to test that on and start building that momentum.
Yeah. Yeah, the momentum has been building over the years, and we've seen different organizations blend and collaborate, and I love that. And I think also it's definitely improved and will likely continue improving with the players that are in play in this perspective of shift. And it's certainly important, like when we talk about, we haven't touched it in this conversation, this would be another hour-long conversation, but affordable housing and, when it's coming to water, when it's coming to the utilities, the infrastructure, the only way to create some of the solutions for these problems is through that collaboration. And that's just critical across the board. So love that. For a business owner, for a community member, let's put a pitch out there. How do people get involved, and where specifically would folks find information? Is it the city's website? How much you encourage somebody to show up to a meeting, or at least get the minutes, or take some more action as far as involvement goes.
Yeah, well, I'll come right back to that. I'm going to go back to the last question and just say something, Matt. I really appreciate hearing from you, a much longer time local who's been involved in quasi-governmental entities and running your own business now for some time, to hear that perspective around the collaboration happening, improving, because I really think that's where the money is. That's where the goal is for us. That's where the bright future is. So thanks for sharing that. As far as individuals, business, nonprofits, etc., how to get involved, that's almost just as challenging as figuring out the budget. The truth is, I have heard from so many community members, there's just too many things going on. And what a wonderful issue to have in some ways, because there will be, laser tag at Fred Field, and at the same time, there's a community foundation meeting to discuss health benefits or public health insurance. And then at the same time, the city's running a learn about your roads meeting. So there's just a lot of overlap in entities and meetings and topics. I think it speaks to the just number of challenges that we have, even though we're a very small community. I think, and I speak, I guess, from where I'm sitting, as far as find your passion and really understand what it is that you think would be of most value to you, to get involved in. Because, I personally, I'm not very good at math, so I'm not going to go to the math meeting, because while I might learn something, my personal value and energy may not be best spent there. But if you're, worried about what you're going to be doing over the weekend, and there happens to be a GCSAT meeting, I'm willing to bet there's posted information about that on the county's website. As a city representative, to speak on behalf of the city, yes, absolutely. The city's website would be a good place to always check in to find out information about an upcoming meeting on any myriad of topics. But I would also point you to, if you're on Facebook, the City of Gunnison's Facebook page is often updated with all sorts of messaging and scheduled meetings or upcoming events. And I think we have about 3 days for submissions to end, but we do have a name your snowplow competition going on right now. So if you haven't got your name in, go to the city's website and find the link and submit a name for one of our 7 snowplows.
Awesome.
Or reach out to me directly. I'm happy to share my phone number, email, and I'm always happy to direct people. I think that's been another enjoyable part of this role, is directing traffic, in a sense, just pointing people to the right resource. And that's just, a 2-minute conversation or 10 minutes. But yeah, online, everything is pretty readily available.
Awesome. Well, we'll include some of those details in our show notes, Diego, and encourage people to reach out, get engaged. I think it's incredibly important. It is a challenge with time and juggling all the other responsibilities, and yet
absolutely.
It is our environment, it's our community, and any kind of input and engagement strengthens the community in multiples. So again, Diego, I really appreciate you for taking a stand and stepping into public service, and for your time this morning. I love it. It's one of the longer conversations recorded to date. I'm sure we could go longer, but we'll end it here for now and maybe circle back again.
Keep going. That's why I get in politics. I can talk all day. But I'm also going to do things, I promise. And no, thanks so much for the opportunity. I've been looking forward to this, and let me know how else I can help.
Sounds good, Diego. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Take care.